Hello and welcome to episode 36 of the Crash and Ride podcast. I'm Patrick Ferguson. I'm your host. Today's guest is Josh Hensley. Josh is the lead singer, guitar player, and principal songwriter in the band The Rutabega from South Bend, Indiana. Well, Josh actually lives in Mishawaka, Indiana, and Garth, their amazing drummer and producer, now lives in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I keep hearing about this like burgeoning punk scene in Kalamazoo. I'm really curious about that. I'm going to try to find out more about that, maybe get some Kalamazoo artists on the show in the future. Anyway, Josh was a guest that some fans of the show requested. I love the first LP by the Rutabega, Brother the Lights Don't Work. It's just fantastic. There's a song on that record called Turn on the Summer that is, it's just so good. If this is your first episode of Crash and Ride is a long-form interview podcast where I talk to musicians who've survived anxiety, depression, and addiction. I myself am a working musician. I play drums with Mike Mills from REM and his side project, the Mike Mills Concerto Project. I also play drums for the Tokyo rock band Pinky Doodle Poodle. They're currently kind of in visa purgatory. We're working on that. They'll hopefully be back before the end of the year. I also play drums in the Athens power pop band 5/8. 5/8's got a movie that just got made about them. It's going to debut at this year's South by Southwest. I'm going to get to see the first screening of that this week. This insanely dedicated small documentary film team that worked on that is just unbelievable. They've worked so hard, and we're finally going to get to see the fruits of their labor. But I know they've done hundreds of hours of interviews with people who have been around the band, been in the band, known the band. Man, I can't wait for everybody to see it. I'm a tiny bit anxious about having three incredibly inquisitive people kind of digging through my professional and somewhat personal life for the past 30-something years, 20-something years. Should be great, though. No, nothing to be scared of here. Couple of quick announcements. Crash and Ride is brought to you in part by Greer Amplification. Greer Amps builds the best boutique effects pedals available. If you're looking for an overdrive, boost, fuzz, compressor, or tremolo that is rugged, road-tested, and at home, on stage, in the studio, or in your living room, Greer has a pedal for you. Nick and his staff strive to build the best products around with the best tone you've ever heard. They believe in their products and they stand behind them too, backing each one up with a lifetime warranty to the original owner. Each Greer Amps product is hand-built in Athens, Georgia, USA. Go to www.greeramps.com or visit your favorite music retailer today. Crash and Ride is also brought to you in part by Jittery Joe's, a local coffee roaster based in Athens, Georgia. They have a special espresso blend named after the podcast. You can get Crash and Ride espresso, whole bean or ground, from our website at crashandridepodcast.com. You can also order t-shirts from that website. Crashandridepodcast.com has blue and black t-shirts with the Crash and Ride logo and the Loud Guitars Save Lives slogan written right on it. I'm sold out of a couple of sizes in blue, but I'm going to get those back by the end of this week, so just keep an eye on the website, crashandridepodcast.com/store. Crash and Ride is also supported in part by individual listeners who make small contributions on our Patreon site, patreon.com/crashandride. You can sign up for a $5 or $10 monthly membership, and that helps us keep going. That's patreon.com/crashandride. A little bit about our interview today. I sent out a survey to some of our listeners, and if you've been a regular listener and if you've commented or contacted me, you're probably going to get a survey here soon. I asked people who they wanted to hear on the show, and several people said, I want you to talk to Josh Hensley because he makes some of my favorite music. So I contacted Josh. It was late at night. He works during the day, and I do the podcast from right here in my living room. So I was able to contact him, and we got into a conversation. It was late at night. We were both like super low-key. This is probably the mellowest Crash and Ride interview ever. Josh talks about growing up in a pretty stable home, but just being a deeply empathic guy. He talks about how transitioning out of that home into being a young adult, his best friend became almost a recluse and became so depressed that he kind of just disappeared from his life, and how that affected him. And also, he became a dad at a really young age, and how that affected his ability to write and play and get out there and do shows. And his journey really intrigued me because the thing that I know about Josh from the personal interactions we've had from the music he makes is that he's an incredibly sweet and kind man. And so I wanted to talk to him somewhat just about his process and how he got to the point where he was making music with Garth and the Rutabega. So I think it's a really interesting interview. It's definitely kind of more cerebral than a lot of the interviews I do, but I'm really grateful that he took the time to talk to me, and I think it's really good. Let's jump into our interview with Josh Hensley. All right, I'm here with Josh Hensley, the guitar player and singer for the amazing band, the Rutabega. Rutabega has 2 full-length LPs out and an EP, and they're currently recording a third LP. They're recorded by Garth, their amazing drummer, and it's a real pleasure to have Josh here. Josh, welcome.
Thanks, Patrick. It's good to talk to you, buddy.
Man, so you're in South Bend, Indiana, correct?
Technically, I am in Mishawaka, which is like South Bend's sister city, but with basically South Bend.
Did you know that my wife was born in Mishawaka?
Maybe I did know that and just forgot.
Yeah, her dad was, I think, finishing up grad school or something.
Yeah.
This is the first late night interview I've done, I think, ever. Usually these are done at like 11 o'clock in the morning. Now it's almost 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah, I just got in from... we're trying to get the exterior of our house painted before the weather gets too cold, and so I was just up on a ladder trying to finish painting one section in the dark. So I'm good to go.
I've painted my own house one time. It took me like weekends and the occasional quote sick day at work to knock it out over the course of like 2 years. It was unbelievably difficult. But I'm also unbelievably cheap, so that's how that happened.
Yeah, right.
So how long, Rutabega's been together, what, 5 or 6 years now?
So Garth and I started playing together in 2011. So just a little over 8 years, actually. And it was a thing before. So there's like pre-Garth Rutabega and post-Garth Rutabega.
Wait, post-Garth or post-Garth?
Well, sorry, not post-Garth.
Man, you scared me for a second.
And then
the Garth era
with Garth. Yeah. No. Yeah, Garth is still fully in the Rutabega.
Good.
But yeah, I started it as a solo thing. In I think around 2002, and then it was a 3-piece for a while with a couple other buddies of mine, and then the drummer Matt moved out to Portland, as so many people from this area have done, and
is he still out there?
He is. Yeah, he's doing well. He does a lot of recording. He's super creative guy. He's done some work. I think he's done some freelance work at Jackpot, but he
Jackpot is the guy from Tape Op Studio, right?
Yeah, Larry Crane.
That's where all that Elliott Smith stuff happened.
Yeah, a lot of the early stuff. So Matt and the other, when the Rutabega was a 3-piece, it was Matt Morgan who played drums, and then my good friend Jared Myers played bass and did some harmonies and stuff like that. And Jared's got he's an incredible songwriter. He had I guess it's still technically he hasn't put anything out in a while, but he's still writing and recording. But he has a project called Daytime Volume, and I can't say volume like turn up the volume, not like Valium. I think I slur that one a lot, but yeah, Daytime Volume. Mm-hmm. But he on some of the Daytime Volume stuff, Matt was helping to record, and they were able to put some of the piano, record some piano parts at Jackpot with like the piano that Elliott had used on some of his early stuff. So that was I still get chills just thinking about that.
Yeah, I was a big fan. I was a huge Elliott Smith fan and was really crushed to hear of his death.
Yeah, same here.
Did you grow up in South Bend?
Basically, yeah. I was born in Elkhart, which is just east of here. The RV capital of the world is.
Used to be the brass instruments capital of the world, didn't it?
Yeah. Selmer and Kahn had the market cornered for a number of years, But yeah, so I was born in Elkhart, and yeah, pretty much my whole life I've kind of been in this area. I've lived in different cities, but all kind of within 30, 40-mile radius.
Yeah. What did your folks do?
So my dad was he was a manager for this company called Vista Manufacturing, and they made lights for like running boards, and you would see them sometimes down the aisles in movie theaters, stuff like that. They ended up getting into appliances too, but yeah, he just started out there when I was a kid, just needing some work, and ended up kind of working his way up, and was managing the plant here in Elkhart for until he retired. And my mom, when I was a kid, she was delivering papers, which I have a lot of memories of, like riding around in the Toyota Corolla station wagon with the back just like jammed, full of newspapers, and like, yeah, we'd stop and get a Slurpee at some point, just kind of, I have a lot of memories of riding around, especially in the summer.
Was that the Indianapolis paper?
No, it was the Elkhart Truth.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But then later on, she worked at school. She was a lunch lady for a number of years, and ended up retiring with the Elkhart school system. So yeah, they're both still alive. They still live in Elkhart. They're really kind, loving people. I totally lucked out in that department.
Yeah. Is the Elkhart Truth still publishing?
I'm not actually sure if they are. I feel like I saw one recently, but I might have that confused because, yeah, that might have been the South Bend Tribune.
I'm also curious as to whether or not the Vista Manufacturing is still open.
It is still rocking.
And that's outstanding.
Yeah, my dad still keeps. Yeah, he still keeps in touch with a lot of his former coworkers, and I mean, it's just he's just a really swell guy, and I think that he had a lot of respect there because he didn't, he's very honest, very straightforward, and I think over the years just really built up a lot of goodwill, and
yeah,
a lot of respect.
Were you an only child?
I was not. So I've got an older sister and a younger sister, and they're so I'm right in the middle. My older sister Brooke is 4 years older than me, and then Becca is 4 years younger than me.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, yeah. We weren't like, being 4 years apart, we were close when we were younger, but not like my partner Emily, her and her brother are 2 years apart, and my kids are also 2 years apart, and I think there's, you in some ways you're growing up together more when you're closer in age.
I think 3 years is the cutoff for partners in crime.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I could see that.
If one of you is 12 and one of you is 10, you can get into some stuff together. But if one of you is 7 and one of you is 10, then it's different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And as adults, we're very close. But yeah, I think, and being the only boy, being the middle child, I think I don't have as much middle child syndrome as a lot of people I know, just because, yeah, I think the age difference, and then also being the only one who identified as a little boy, made it a little different.
Well, spending as much time as I have with Rutabega's lyrics and the extraordinary body of work you've created, like, I definitely get the vibe, like, maybe things were kind of heavy at different times in your childhood.
Yeah. And I, when you reached out about doing this interview, I did kind of initially have this moment of anxiety. I've listened to several episodes, but the one with Fez, who's a friend of mine as well. Hearing him talk about imposter syndrome was just kind of, in some ways, it was a little shocking to me. And actually, I got to see him perform a couple weeks ago at there was a PRF event called the Camp Out in Mattawan, Michigan, and Fez has performed with his band Small Awesome. And I went up to him the next day, and I was like, I don't remember exactly what I said, but just, I couldn't believe you were talking about having imposter syndrome, because you spend 5 minutes with Fez or see him perform, and it's just like, this guy is just such an original.
Yeah, he's absolutely brilliant.
Incredible.
Yeah. So that's episode 4. A couple of things.
Yeah.
If people don't have just started listening to the podcast, episode 4, I interviewed Fez Razi, who's a mutual friend of Josh and I. Lives in Chicago, Illinois. He speaks 4 or 5 languages and plays everything with strings on it: guitar, bass, some instruments from all over the world that I don't really know what they're even called. And he's a brilliant singer and a brilliant composer. And episode 4 was about imposter syndrome, about how he's sitting at the sort of apex of this mountain of achievement and feeling at any moment like the jig is going to be up and he's going to be discovered as a fraud, which is so absurd.
Yeah. But yeah, I had a moment of that. Just, I, like anyone, I've had things that I've struggled with, and there have been some things that I've gone through that have been difficult, but and I think this is something my dad kind of instilled in me, and I'm pretty sure he got it from his mom, who was just my grandma Hensley. She's just the sweetest, like, when you think of people talk about, like, oh, she was an angel. I mean, just the kindest, sweetest, strongest person that I think I've ever known. But
is this your dad's mom?
Yeah. Elizabeth Furl Hensley, and her maiden name was Cox, Cox.
Yeah.
But he would if I'd be down about something, or something happened, and he had this phrase that she taught him was, well, if that's as bad as it gets, we're going to be okay. And there's the idea that there's always someone out there who is going through something more difficult than whatever it is you're facing. And so, that's something I don't feel super qualified, or sometimes I feel, like my initial thought when you reached out was, I've got so many friends who are struggling with this stuff way more than I ever have, and that it's silly for me to think I can talk about it. So I guess that was my long-winded disclaimer.
Well, it's interesting that one of the people who kind of grabbed me by the lapel and said, you have to interview Josh Hensley, was a brain cancer survivor that is a mutual friend of ours. So clearly you've spoken to him and his journey. So
wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, I'm sort of curious, a lot of the songs are kind of infused with a genuine melancholy, and I wondered, is that something that is just part of your writing process, or has that something that's informed you or your experience since you were young?
I think a big part of that comes from, I mean, yeah, there are definitely times when I'm like, working through some things or processing loss, and the first album that Garth and I recorded together is called Brother the Lights Don't Work, and it's not like a concept album or anything like that, but there were definitely themes that kind of kept coming up in the songs, and even in just like what we were talking about, what we were thinking about, and processing loss was a big part of that, and not just like through death, but like losing friends to time, or to mental illness issues, or even just the loss of innocence as we get older. So I think there's definitely a lot of me just kind of working through stuff through songwriting, but also I've always been a bit of an empath, and that if you walk outside and look around, you're gonna. A lot of us are hurting and just walking around with these like gaping holes in our souls, and there's just a lot of darkness and a lot of pain in this world, and as an empath, it's I pick up on that, and it's always been hard for me to I remember watching, I don't know if you remember this, there was like a TV version of Beauty and the Beast when I was younger. I want to say like Linda Hamilton. Yeah, maybe I'm screwing that up, but I feel like she was in it. But I like as a kid, I remember my parents were watching that, and there was like a scene where the Beast was cornered in an alley, and like these guys were like, yelling at him and picking on him and getting violent with him because he was different. And that like affected me. Like I had to like get up and walk away because it was just like so upsetting to me. So I think that's part of it too. Is just, being, just like feeling for people in my life that are also hurting.
I think childhood is when you're deeply empathic is really difficult because, this sort of every child is doing a constant cost benefit analysis with brutality. Like
Mm-hmm.
children are so wicked to each other. Like I've got a child now who's in school, and I just like, every now and then just hear about the mean girls after school,
Yeah.
And my kid is deeply empathic, and
Mm-hmm.
and you get these kids who just don't have that,
Right.
and it's easier for them to kind of be cruel and to navigate the hierarchy of the kind of social, like Lord of the Flies shit that kids get into. And if you're a kid with a big heart like you are, and I mean like I was, and like my daughter is, it's
Mm-hmm.
it's not really the best tool set for ascending, in that framework.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I remember kids coming over, and I talked about like how lucky I am to have the parents that I do. I remember like having friends come over and be like, what is this Leave It to Beaver bullshit? Like your parents are like making dinner together, and your dad's like helping with the dishes, and they're like, they like each other, and they're like joking around and stuff. And just like, our house is not like that. And I think there were times, and there probably still are times when I almost feel like guilty. Like what why do I get to experience that? Like when I, you know, you know, your friends are went through, you know, horrible stuff, or you know, kid. One of the things that I really have a hard time with is just kids whose parents are mean to them like that. It's hard for me to even like think about or talk about that, just because it's so messed up. Like this person didn't ask to be brought into this world, and then the people that are supposed to be protecting them are mean or hateful or hurtful like that. Just that concept really really messes with me.
Do you think that you're kind of, I don't want to say ideal, but you had a good childhood and your parents were pretty rock steady, and it seems like, do you think that informed your decision to become a dad so young?
I mean, that definitely wasn't like a conscious choice.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say in some ways it was, but I wasn't like, hey, I'm 19, I'm ready to be a dad. But you know, I can say that, you know, at my school and stuff like, I mean, not to like blame. I mean, I made dumb choices like a lot of teenagers do. But yeah, but it did. I think it did. I was more scared to tell them that I was going to be a dad. In some ways, than I think I actually was of being a dad. But they were. I mean, they were so gracious and just supporting from, like, you know. I mean, it was kind of a big deal when I told them. But just immediately, it wasn't like, what were you thinking? Or, you know, like, what are you going to do now? It was just like, okay, how can we help you do this? Which, you know, just, I mean, it meant so much to me at that point. 'Cause I was just a scared kid. It was, you know, like summer after I graduated from high school was when I found out that, my girlfriend at the time was pregnant. But yeah, I think it definitely maybe gave me the sense or the confidence that I could do it. When I found out, it wasn't just like, oh my God, I gotta get out of here. Like this can't happen.
I mean, by contrast, my parents split up when I was 10. And
Yeah.
and things before that weren't great, and I didn't become a dad until I was 44.
Yeah.
So,
Little different story there for sure.
So were you already playing music at that point? Did you already have bands and stuff?
Yeah. I started playing guitar when I was 15. My best friend, Ben, who, I mean, his name comes up on Brother the Lights Don't Work, but he had gotten a guitar. I think it was either for Christmas or his birthday when we were 15, and it was this beautiful G&L ASAT Telecaster, and I don't even know like how or why. Like, I mean, we liked music, and but at some point he was like, yeah, I want to learn how to play. And so when I would go over to his house to hang out, that was like, yeah, I just wanted that Telecaster in my hands as much as possible.
Yeah.
And so we started talking, like, hey, Josh, you should get a guitar too. And like, hey, I should get a guitar and we should start a band. And like, so that was the seed. So I think I had a birthday coming up, and I knew it was like outside of, like, it was a big ask, like, okay, you know, I really want to get a guitar. So I made some deal with my parents. It was like, I researched and found some guy in the, it was probably in the Elkhart Truth in the Classified. Some guy was selling an electric guitar. It's like this crappy Oscar Schmidt, like Strat kind of ripoff. But so I found that and this little PV Rage practice amp, and I said, hey, can this be my birthday present? And then, like, whatever over that, like, you know, whatever you weren't, however much you weren't gonna spend on my birthday, like, I'll mow lawns the rest of the summer and pay off the rest of it. And for whatever reason they went for it. Which, again, I'm a very privileged person to have been in that position. But
dude, what year was that?
Yeah. Let's see. Math. How does it work?
Just roughly, like mid-90s.
So I graduated in 96.
Yeah.
Graduated.
So it's probably 93, 94.
Yeah. Yeah, around there.
I don't think people now understand the stigma of deciding to be a rock and roll musician for a lot of people whose parents are baby boomers, because so many baby boomer musicians died at 27 of heroin addiction or suicide, or and so for you to tell your parents, for me to tell my parents, hey, I want a set of drums, I want to play in a rock band, they're like, no, hell, you no, forget it. Like, it's not going to happen. You'll end up a Satan worshiping heroin addict and die in a gutter somewhere. And and so, which
totally put you off of playing drums, right?
Man, I had to hide a set of drums at my friend Eddie Saster's house.
Oh, Patrick.
Because his mom didn't have a phone. I could go over there and dart out to gigs when I was 15, 16, 17 years old, because I'm going to stay at Eddie's house this weekend. And then, like, yeah, because there was no way to track me because no one had cell phones. So, yeah, that was my first couple of years of playing out.
Yeah.
So your parents went for this Oscar Schmidt and PV Rage, and you were a rocker all of a sudden.
Yeah. And I did some, like, I borrowed, so Ben had some, like, corny learn how to play chords video.
Mel Bay,
man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I borrowed that and was, like, oh, okay, Michael, row your boat ashore. Got it. And, at some point I took some lessons and felt like I kind of learned the basics. I just want to be able to start writing songs, which is, I don't know if that, I think that is a little odd, but, like, I think Ben and I had this, like, idea, like, we wanted to play Nirvana songs, definitely. Like, that was a big motivation, but also, like, very early, we wanted to start writing songs, and I don't really know where that came from, but once like the lessons started to get into, like, theory and stuff, like, I was like, okay, like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I just want to start writing and playing. I don't really care about mixolydian modes or things like that. And, like, looking back, like, I wish I had maybe taken some piano lessons too, if that had been a possibility, but, whatever. But yeah, so there was this kid, Justin, who, came to my church sometimes, and his dad was in, like, a local cover band called Just in Case. Which is great, and he could do spot on Billy Idol, and, like, like they would cover Billy Idol songs, and those were like always the ones where people like, oh man, nailed that. But so he was, I mean, he was, to me, he was a nice guy. Like, and I know like Justin and his dad had their own issues, but he let us set up and practice there and be loud and, just kind of figure out what being in a band is. So we would set up down in the basement over there, and there was a little like for like a practice PA. So it was pretty incredible to like be able to like play loud. I mean, like loud guitars save lives, like they do like that. I mean, that got me through so much, and just like, just the privilege to be able to like go down there and bash it out and like, work through teenage angst.
Yeah.
I mean, it was life-saving.
So, but then what, 3-4 years later, you suddenly become a dad.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I don't want to like overshare with Ben, but, he kind of started to withdraw from us as friends, and kind of from it started with like his family and like, like authority figures at school. Like, I mean, we were like, we don't like our teachers either. But when it started to get weird was like we would go over to practice, because at that point we had moved from Justin's basement over to Ben's garage, and so Justin and I would go over there to like practice, and Ben would like be like, hey, I'm just I'm not really feeling it, I'm gonna just go down to my room. And Justin and I would be like, okay, this is awkward, like we're over at your house. And we would still play, but it was like not as exciting. And also like, what's wrong with our friend? And we had started to experiment with drugs, and I for whatever reason, Ben was really affected by that. And I don't know what it is. Like I think there were already cracks that were forming, and there were like some pretty intense experiences there, that he didn't seem to bounce back from like the rest of us did.
Yeah.
Eventually we, he kind of just shut us out of his life, and his parents ended up moving down to Missouri, and he stayed like up in our area for a while after that. But then, then eventually he ended up moving there, and it didn't sound like it was a good situation. Like,
you think he was depressed?
I think there was maybe some other stuff too. I don't know. I kept in touch with his mom and his sisters some too for a while after that, but like it got to the point where he would only come out of his room like at night when everyone else was in bed, and he would like, maybe leave a note like, hey, can you get more cereal or things like that. But last I heard, he was seemed to be doing a little better. I don't know if he was ever like officially I mean, I'm assuming there was like testing done and some kind of diagnosis or something. It sounded like he was getting some help, but he never did get back in touch with me. I tried several times through the years just to kind of reach out and, or I'd like send a package and just kind of let him know what I was doing and, leave a phone number. Tried calling a couple times, but it's been a while since I've heard anything from his family, so I'm not sure now how he's doing, but the last report I got sounded a little more positive. But that was a weird. I mean, he was my best friend. It was like a brother to me. And when that all, after that all went down, like Justin and I we were kind of like musically, like what do we do now? And we tried doing stuff just the two of us, and that was cool, but it never really felt like it never really felt like it was sounding like what we wanted it to. So there were a number of different configurations after that with different friends.
So Justin was vocals and guitar, or what was he doing?
No, he played drums.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Justin was the drummer.
And then your daughter's born. You're 19.
Yeah, daughter was born. I was 19. And her mom and I got married a year later. And then a year after that, my son was born. And by the time my son was 2 and my daughter was 4, their mom was like, "Hey, this isn't working, and I don't want to be married to you anymore." Basically,
I've been through one of those conversations. They're not great.
Yeah, and it was. I mean, looking back, I mean, it shouldn't have been totally shocking. I mean, we didn't like, we weren't like fighting all the time, and so I mean, obviously, being young parents is a lot of
pressure.
a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. But through the whole thing, I think we were more like just friends. We were like friends that had kids together in some way.
What were you doing for a living?
So let's see. I was working at Menards.
Oh, the lumber
Menards
yard
out there?
Well, no, but Lisa's brothers, my wife's brothers, have all worked at Menards, I think. That's the sort of Midwestern equivalent of Home Depot.
Improvement.
Yeah, Lowe's.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, when my daughter was born, actually, their mom called me at Menards when I was working at Menards, which it was kind of weird, like not everyone had cell phones at that time, so
right.
I don't know if anyone did, but she called me at work, and I was like, well, that's kind of weird, and she was like, hey, can you come over after work? We need to talk. And I was like, oh my God. That's not a normal thing that happens. But that was good on Menards as part of the story.
Yeah.
I worked there for a couple of years, and then I was doing warehouse type work, just countertop laminate.
Yeah, you've kind of lived a Bruce Springsteen song in a lot of ways, man.
Sure. Yeah.
And so you you and your wife split up, and you start sort of single dad, and I'm guessing on alternate weekends and stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It was like, okay, I wasn't even 25, and I'm like, okay, I've got 2 kids. I'm divorced. This is not like how I thought things were going to play out, but, you just kind of, I just kind of tried to roll with it as best as I could. I made some really bad decisions. I like immediately jumped into another relationship, and didn't like process like the divorce at all. It was just like, oh, hey, there's this person who, is paying attention to me and, is like, thinks I'm cool or whatever. And yeah, just immediately jumped into another relationship. And then like, after a couple of years, maybe it was it a couple of years? I don't know. When that relationship broke up, it like had everything kind of compounded and just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was a mess there for a while, just drinking a lot, making not great choices, and just trying to work through. I don't know what I was trying to do. I was just like kind of hurting, and like,
yeah. So that was kind of the bottom for you.
For sure.
How long did that go on?
Maybe a couple of years.
Man.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe it was probably a little less than a couple of years, but.
So the kids are like 6 and 4 at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Emily, who I'm still married to 14 years later, we had been friends for several years. And she when we first met, I was married to the kids' mom, and we had just it was like one of those like, oh my God, I've known this person all my life kind of thing. We just immediately hit it off and became good friends. And we had several mutual friends. So we would see each other at shows and stuff like that. And it kind of kept in touch, but we were never both single at the same time. And then it was all of a sudden it was like, well, we were, and we started hanging out a lot, and it was, I was like, marriage was the last thing on my mind.
Yeah.
Like I'm not doing that again. Like that sucked.
like, I mean, there's nothing lonelier than being in a marriage that's not working.
Right.
Because you're just like, you're in this relationship that you should be able to confide things and sort of talk through stuff with, and if it's not working, you're just like, basically you're sharing an apartment or a house with someone whose feelings you have to defer to, but while your own feelings are kind of off the table. It's a terrible feeling.
Yeah, for sure.
So you and Emily kind of climbed out of that hole together, huh?
We did. It was, it was not, it didn't make any sense, but like we started dating and like 2 months later we were married. Yeah, not even joking. It was
just eased right into it, huh?
Yeah. Well, how about a blended family? Like this will be easy.
Yeah. Did she have kids?
She did not. No.
Yeah.
And she had not been married before either. I mean, she had a long-term relationship that she had came out of, I mean, not too long before we started dating, but yeah, anyway, so we jumped in, and, 14 years later, I mean, she's my best friend. She's just an incredible person. I'm, again, privileged and lucky to be here. But
did you naturally kind of get on the straight and narrow after you started seeing each other after a couple of years of kind of like ignoble and desperate behavior? Like you're like, I'm going to stop drinking quite so much, and I'm going to sort of patch things up here with myself. Or was that something that?
Yeah.
Was there a day where she was like, by the way, Josh?
It was like kind of like waking up from a bad dream. Just I mean, I didn't like immediately like stop drinking or things like that, but it was like, yeah, it was like waking up and just coming back to earth, and trying to figure out what we wanted life to be like together. And and it's I tried even through that, like my lost weekend or whatever you want to call it. I really, like, when I was with the kids, I tried my best to be present and to be, like, I didn't drink around them, and I love them. Like, I love spending time with them, and I always have. And I think we have the relationship that we have now. A lot of that is just, it's always been that way. They're amazing people, and I feel really fortunate that they, they're 20 and 22 now. And we talk all the time. And, I mean, I don't see my daughter as much as I see my son, just because she's a little farther away. And also, I mean, she's just she's a busy person. She's got a lot going on, but, like my son and I still, we go to breakfast, pretty much every Wednesday. He works, he's working third shift. So I'll pick him up when he's getting off work at like 6 a.m, and then we'll go have breakfast, and then I'll drop him off, and then I go to work.
Not long after you met Emily, I guess, the Rutabega starts, right?
Yeah. And it's kind of, I had known Garth, before that. He had actually, so I was in one of the bands that Justin and I started, was called Space and Noise Production. Kind of grew out of, like I said, Justin and I were like trying to figure out something to do after Ben kind of
faded.
And that was one of the bands that.
What kind of stuff was that?
Came out of it. It's kind of noisy indie rock.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. It was tough. Like 5 people is, like I look at, now there's a reason I'm only in a band with one other guy.
Right.
But yeah, we had some really good experiences.
Is there a scene in South Bend?
A scene?
Yeah, they're like basement shows, and there are a lot of bands.
Yeah, and there was a really, like, when Space and Noise Productions was a band, there was a really great all ages scene going. There was this coffee shop called Higher Grounds, and a very original name for a coffee shop.
I was going to say, I think I know 3 other Higher Grounds, but I wasn't.
Right. All the cool kids called it RJ's because it was RJ's before it was Higher Grounds. But yeah, it's like we would there were some other bands that were, that we really bonded with, and we would have shows there that were just, just so much energy, and kids just packed in and just like so into it. And so, it's weird being, kind of getting older and watching things change, but there is still, there are a lot of really great songwriters, a lot of great bands still, and it doesn't feel like the scene doesn't feel as cohesive maybe as it did. Like it was very very kind of focused, it felt like, at that point.
At the risk of sounding like an old fart, there's a part of me that feels like the internet has kind of diffused some of the intensity of music scenes for young people, because I used to sit in my room and crave that connection with other like kids who were into music, and now like those same kids are sitting in those same rooms, but they have an internet connection and they can like get on to a game server or a chat server or something and like make that connection without ever having to leave the house. And so you don't see, in my experience, there's still plenty of punk bands, there's still plenty of basement shows, there's still plenty of DIY stuff happening, but it doesn't have the same kind of urgency of like, oh my God, I finally found people I can connect with. It's kind of like, we should do a thing, man.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and I don't, I'm sure, I hope, and I think there's a coffee shop now called The Well, and they do like punk shows in the basement. So I'm glad that there's still, I hope there are all these bands that I just, as the old guy, don't know about yet. But
there's still bands. There's a band here in Athens that's made up of people who are all too young to vote, called Fishbug, and Fishbug is astonishingly great. I saw them twice this last weekend, and both times was just like, how is this band so good? So you should, it's still going to happen. It's still happening, but I think that like, and also they have a little scene. Like every time I see Fishbug play, there's a semicircle of 30 or 40 kids their age, and I want to like grab them all by the shoulders and go, what you're experiencing is really special. You have a peer band that is going to do things and go places and be on television because this band is that good. Revel in this. You will never forget these days or these shows. But like, what do you?
Don't do that.
I'm not going to do that. I really, I feel so. I get really emotional about it because I'm so excited for all of them. Not just Fishbug the band, but Fishbug the like community around the band. But like, I'm just watching it from the sidelines. Like, oh man, I remember when the world was just full of promise and secrets that to be like discovered and explored, and like I latched on to bands that weren't as good as Fishbug, and still like saw hundreds of shows that were amazing, but like I'm just so happy that it's happened, to see it happen. It's sort of nascent, like high school rock scene is exciting. Hey, Crash and Ride would like to remind you that if you're someone who's struggling with anxiety and depression and you're contemplating self-harm, you can always call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. It's 24/7. It's free. It's confidential. They have trained volunteers to help you through your crisis. 1-800-273-8255, or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. If you're a trans person struggling with anxiety, depression, gender dysphoria, or any of the other issues that trans people face, and you want to talk to a peer, you can always call the Trans Lifeline's peer support line at 1-877-565-8860, or you can go to translifeline.org. Thanks again for listening to Crash and Ride. Let's get back into our interview with Josh Hensley. So were there times like before, it feels to me like when Rutabega came together with you and Garth, like there was like a solid like artistic connection that like fueled an intent, like this is just going to be a thing that we do. But were there times before that, as a young dad working in a warehouse, doing all kinds of like serious physical exhausting work, where you were like, man, I think I'm just going to hang this guitar thing up and just be a dad?
No, I mean, I don't know why, but no, it was just always something that I made time for. And even when when it was like no sleep, my kids are in diapers, and I'm working this shitty job and trying to keep myself together. I mean, music was kind of like the thing that always kept me grounded in some ways, and it was always there for me. And it still is, it's pretty incredible to me to be at this point in my life and to still, just feel like so inspired, and to see like my friends like be inspired and making they're like making this incredible art. And like, like you always think, and you always hear that rock and roll is a young person's game. But I don't have any time for that anymore. It's just like, I mean, Neil Young just put out a beautiful album this week, that, it's like I mean, I understand, and when you think about the Rolling Stones being like young and like, snotty and doing their thing, like, yeah, that's rock and roll. And you think of the Ramones, like, yeah, that's rock and roll. But like, I don't know. I mean, I think if you're a creative person and you staying engaged in life, it really doesn't matter how old you are. I mean, that's
well, and I think
I don't know how we're doing it, but we are. We're still staying engaged. I mean, talk about Fez. You look at our friends and the music they're making now, and it's so good and it's so vital. And I'm glad that Fishbug is there, and like some of the bands that I've been really excited about coming out of Kalamazoo that are like, that are young and doing just writing incredible songs. It's nice that it's still happening and it's still populating. But it's okay to be as old as we are and still be excited about music.
Well, it's about community, right? Like the fact that there are still people who care about music that also care about like the things that we're thinking about as writers. Like, well, I'm not a songwriter, but like, this is the third interview in a row where I've talked to someone who had some connection to the PRF, which if you're listening to this and you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a studio in Chicago, Illinois, owned by a guy called Steve Albini, who you've probably heard of. But there was a web board, like just a discussion board attached to that studio that ended up sort of blooming into this massive community of musicians and studio engineers and other like music fans. And we do these festivals 3 or 4 times a year where we all show up and play for each other. You just came back from the PRF campout, which I've never been to, but that's like up in the Dells, right, in Wisconsin.
It's actually in Mattawan, Michigan, which is it's not far from Kalamazoo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's at this. It's called Pretty Lake Camp, and I really love the camp out. Garth actually Garth is my bandmate in the Rutabega, and he just in talking like to so there's the summer barbecue in Chicago, which is kind of like the biggest and longest running PRF event, but then there's been offshoots. There have been Louisville has done several.
New York City.
New York City.
There was a UK PRF event, and there's been a like West Coast, I think Berkeley PRF
West Coast.
event. Yeah.
Thunder Snow is up in the UP that has happened every February since 2013. That was actually the first Thunder Show was the first PRF thing that the Rutabega played. But yeah, the Thunder Snow and the camp out, I really love it, and it's really nice too because it can get. I mean, it's a bit of a marathon, just with band after band that's just like blowing your mind. So it's nice to be able to like, hey, I'm gonna go back to my room and take a nap, or like I'm gonna go walk in the woods for a little bit because I'm socially awkward, and whatever. It's nice. I really love if you can come to the camp out sometime. I would love that.
I'm a big outdoors. I love to camp and hike, so I'm gonna have to do that eventually. I think that if Pinky Doodle Poodle, the Japanese rock band I play with, gets their visa situation squared away in time, we're gonna do Thunder Snow.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah,
that would be so great. I missed the last two Thunder Snows, and I'm really itching to. I'm planning on going this year.
Yeah, if you don't know what we're talking about with Thunder Snow, there's some PRF people just rent out an entire hotel on the UP next to an enormous frozen lake in February, and just have this like cabin fever blowout for a long weekend. And there are dance parties in the fish scaling room, the fish cleaning room. Yeah, and live shows running around the clock, and it's a wild time and a beautiful time. So do you feel like that? So you and Garth start doing the ultimate form of the Rutabega, and if you played the first Thunder Snow, then you guys were just kind of just getting underway, right?
Yeah. So we started playing together in 2011. I remember why I brought up Space and Noise Productions. So Garth had actually recorded this Space and Noise Productions that we did an EP, like a 5-song EP, and Garth was the guy in South Bend that recorded all the punk bands on the cheap. And when Space and Noise was talking about recording, I was like, hey, we should get that Garth guy to record because A, we're broke, and B, he seems like a pretty cool guy. We knew him from shows. Garth was very, very involved in the punk scene in South Bend, and I was like kind of on the periphery. I knew there were shows going on, but it always seemed like this cool, scary thing that like, I would find out about like after the fact, like, oh, there were bands that played at the Lions Club last night. Like, oh man, I wish I'd known about that. Like I would have gone, that kind of thing.
Right.
And I didn't go to school in South Bend, so I didn't know a lot of those kids, but yeah. So Garth recorded our EP, and I would see him sometimes at shows, but I was not, we weren't like close friends, and he was actually closer with my partner Emily, and they had a mutual friend, Matt Miller, who was like a brother to both of them. Just a really, really cool guy. And I didn't know Matt well, but I knew that he was a really huge figure in Emily's life, and Matt passed away early 2011, and his funeral was in Kansas City, and Garth. It's weird. I can remember it so vividly. Like we had gotten an email from another friend saying that they had heard that Matt passed away, and Emily was like, "Do you have Garth's number? Like someone needs to get a hold of Garth and let him know." And I did. Like I had his number saved, and I remember calling him. But they decided to road trip. Garth and Emily decided to road trip with either one or two other friends to Kansas City for Matt's funeral. And in the not to like, yeah, it felt like Matt brought us together.
What happened to Matt?
In some ways? Well, that's he was in the service, and he had been injured in a helicopter accident, and I don't know a lot of the details. Some of it just sounded kind of odd, but but we were told that he developed a blood clot and died unexpectedly from that.
That's terrible.
But yeah, it was like I said, I didn't know Matt really well. We still talk about him a lot. Emily was really close with Matt, and Garth was too. But yeah, through that, they were kind of like, why don't we ever hang out? This is, we don't live far away. So we just through that kind of decided to start having dinner once a week with Garth, and sometimes his partner Nikki would come, or we'd go there, and we had some other friends that would sometimes be there. But so we started having these regular dinners together, and would always afterward, like we would talk about like, oh, we should play games, and sometimes we would, but like almost always we would end up in the basement after dinner, just playing music, and it kind of it just very naturally kind of came out of that. And I got asked to do a Rutabega show, and I hadn't really been doing anything with the Rutabega. I mean, it was just me at that point. But I asked Garth if he would want to play drums for that show. It was in Indianapolis, and yeah, that would be great. And so we kind of like threw a set together, and we hadn't really been like, when we would play after dinner, it wasn't like, here's a song that I wrote, can you figure out a part? It was just like kind of, just whatever, improvising, having fun. But that show was really fun, and it was like, hey, we should keep doing this, and then it just kind of grew from there.
I feel like that Thunder Snow show, like I heard about it like after you guys played it, like people were like, this band is amazing, and then things sort of seemed to like accelerate from there. It wasn't long after that Brother the Lights Don't Work came out, as I recall.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that Thunder Snow and just becoming part of the PRF community has definitely, I mean, it's been life-changing for me. And Garth he had been a forum, posted on the online forum for a number of years. I think mainly in the what they call the tech room, but
right.
As someone who recorded bands, as someone who was, obsessed with equipment and gear and instruments and how things work, he would post there quite a bit for, just, hey, what if I'm trying to do this? Anyone have any advice or whatever? And I remember him telling me, like, I was aware of it, I knew who Albini was. I mean, I was a huge Nirvana fan, so of course, I was aware of Albini and his work with the, with Kim Deal and the Pixies, and but in my mind, it was like kind of like Chicago noise rock, which is a big part of it. But like Garth had asked me when he heard they were doing this Thunder Snow thing. He had asked me if I would be interested in trying to play it, because his partner Nikki was living in the UP at the time, going to grad school up there in Marquette, and so he was trying to get up there as often as he could to see her. And I'm like, okay, so you want to go in February, you want to go up to Escanaba or Gladstone.
So if you don't know this part of the Midwest, UP means Upper Peninsula, which is the upper half of the state of Michigan on the other side of the lake. And it is very, very cold, pretty sparsely populated for the most part. And, in the summertime, there's lots of people up there fly fishing and hiking and backpacking and stuff, because there's a lot of brook trout up there. But in the wintertime, it's not really, I'm sure that it's not hard to find a room for Thunder Snow. It's not like the hotel's booked out.
Well, it is now, and and I think that's part of why it's been going on since 2013, because they're like, okay, this random weekend in February, we're going to be completely sold out. Hell yes, we want to do that.
Yeah. So
it definitely makes sense for them.
Wasn't a lot of Brother the Lights Don't Work recorded in like an old church or something?
Yeah. So there was an old church in South Bend. That had become, I mean, it was just sitting empty. It had become a place where they were doing shows, probably mostly punk shows. But so Garth was running sound there. At that point, it was called Bender Ballroom. So he had keys, and he talked to, I don't know if it was the owner or whoever was kind of like in charge, and had said, hey, my band is going to be recording. Would it be okay if we came in during off times, like if there's no shows booked, and use the space? And they're like, yeah, whatever, that's fine. Just clean up when you leave. But it was, just kind of a big open room. And I've got that whole experience was really, I've got like really, really nice memories of that. Just like, it just felt like we had gelled as a band, and really kind of, things kind of came into focus, and it was just, Garth and I think we were spending a lot of time together. So we were bonding and, becoming close. And just recording there was a really great experience. He brought all his recording equipment there, and we just kind of set up and did most of the tracking there.
You guys complement each other so well, because like he is, Garth, and my brief interactions with him, my impressions of him are he's very like technically minded. He's also kind of pugnacious. He can be almost curt, and it's not out of like disrespect or any kind of like self-involvement. He's just very direct, and you're very. He's definitely 100% drummer. Whereas you're super intuitive and very empathic and or empathetic and you guys are just like yin and yang. It's a good combination, and it really shows on that record.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Your daughter's voice is in the opening movement of that record.
Yeah. So during that time when we were recording Brother, both my kids were in choir in school, but there was a period there where she was in an all-girl choir in high school, and I had I went to the first concert since she had been in that particular ensemble, and they did an a cappella song. I don't remember what the song was, but I was just sitting there like trying not to like sob in public because it was just so beautiful and
every dad of a daughter that's listening to this right now is like, oh yeah, buddy, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But yeah, so I was like, it was in my, after that, I was like, I would so just love to record, them singing something. And so I asked, my daughter's name is Truth. I asked Truth, I was like, hey, how would you feel about me coming in and recording, the choir was called Bella Voce. Again, very original name for Bella Voce at Higher Grounds. But yeah, I asked her how she would feel about me coming in to record them singing. She was like, oh, that would be really cool. And I'm like, all right, got the green light. So I asked I got a hold of the choir director and said, hey, my band is recording an album, and I would love to have Bella Voce sing on one of the songs. So I had this little kind of thing I had been playing with, and it had I had a melody for it, and I was like, it just basically just be like some ahs or some oohs, something like that. And she was like, yeah, just, that sounds really great. If you can get me a recording, I'll see if we can work something out. So I sent her a recording of me. I recorded the chords and then had a melody, and then recorded a second part as a harmony, kind of or a counter melody, whatever. And so I sent that to her, and then it was seriously like a week later, she called me and she was like, hey, we've got our parts down. Can you come tomorrow and record us? And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll see if I can get off work for a couple hours. So I went during choir hour, and I brought just like a little recording setup, and I sat on the stage with like an acoustic guitar, and they stood like kind of in a semicircle around me, and so I played the chords, and the choir director led them, and it was just, that experience was just so beautiful.
So you can hear that if you go to the Rutabega's Bandcamp and listen to Brother the Lights Don't Work. That's the first song on the record, and it's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah. I've had it. I felt like Truth and I were close, and but that's kind of weird to like have your dad like come to your school with his guitar and like record, you. And that, so like when I was packing up, they were all kind of standing around, and I thank them for 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 letting me record. And I was like, I hope I didn't embarrass you too much. And she was like, I'm actually really proud of you, Dad. That was awesome. And yeah, I had that was that was that was really, really beautiful.
I mean, after everything that you went through, sort of striking out as attempting to be married to her mom, and then kind of spending your 40 days in the desert after that, and then starting a new life with Emily. And I think all those years, just knowing myself that if it was me, I would have been questioning, like, how am I doing at this dad thing? I don't feel like I'm doing so great at it. And then to have my daughter come to me after something like that and say, I'm super proud of you, Dad, would just destroy me.
Yeah. That was, I will never forget that.
Yeah. So you, Garth, have made another LP, and you're working on a new LP.
Yeah, we're in the process of recording our third. We were really fortunate to the last record that we put out. It's called Unreliable Narrator, and our friend John Solomon, who runs a label called Comedy Minus One. Again, that was a connection through the PRF that we met John and kind of hit it off with him. He put out our last record, and that was just a really great experience. We are working on the third record right now. We've got the basic tracks recorded. So I think gonna be recording the vocals next. And I'm really, really, really excited about it.
Do you have a tentative release date for that, or is it just kind of when it happens?
No, I mean, I think we're, I think we're hoping for maybe spring of 2020, but you know how those things are.
Yeah, no, I do.
Yeah, that's what we're shooting for.
Well, man, I usually wind these things up with 10 questions that are loosely based on the Bernard Pivot questions that they end inside the actor studio with. But of course, they're different questions because everybody, I think, has some preconceived notions about how they'd answer those questions. If I like to hit people with mine. If you're good, we could jump into that.
Let's do it.
All right, man. What is the fondest memory you have of a meal that you've had?
Oh, okay. So I think I have to give a disclaimer that I really struggle with definitive answers to things like that, like making lists, like my top 5, whatever. I make it too much. So I'm just going to go with the first things that come here, and no one can hold me to this.
There's no wrong answers.
So, okay. So I think the first thing that kind of jumps out. So when a few years ago we got to go out to we flew out to Seattle and did some dates with our friends. They're a really great band from Seattle called Chani Antique, and they're no longer playing, but we toured with them from Seattle down to the Bay, and we played the West Coast PRF event there in Oakland. And I can't remember the name of the restaurant, but I really love burritos. Like like really, really love them. And
there's astonishingly
Charlie.
good Mexican food in Indiana these days. I didn't
Oh,
expect that, but my wife's
yeah.
family is in Indianapolis, and man, unbelievably great Mexican food in Indianapolis, and I'm sure it's in Mishawaka and South Bend too.
Yeah, next time you're in the area, if we can, I would love to take you to my favorite place. Is this? It's called Ricky's Taqueria, and it's so good. Just this tiny little place, but yeah, we definitely are very fortunate, and
Yeah.
there's some really great Mexican food in the area. But yeah, but there was this, and Charlie's going to be, so Charlie, who, he played guitar in, Chung Antique, and, he's a really great, tour guide, and like knows where the best restaurants are and the best record shops, and, whatever it is, best coffee. But we got burritos at this place, and I'm drawing a blank, but that it was my first time out west, and Emily and Garth were there, and we were there with Charlie and Whitney and Mike from Chung Antique, and yeah, we just had these amazing burritos at this Mexican restaurant, and we I think that was the point where we decided to call it this burrito made me cry tour, because it was just so good.
What kind of burrito was it? Do you remember?
I'm pretty sure it was al pastor.
A favorite of mine.
Yeah.
Hard to say no to the pork and pineapple.
Yeah. Yep. So there's a number of Emily is so good at like pulling just simple things together and making just incredible meals. So there's a lot of, I could talk about food all day, but I'll go with that. That was the first one that came to mind.
Okay. Second question. What is the most frightened you've ever been?
Whew. I think probably the most frightened I've ever been was just kind of like going through a divorce at that young age, and just kind of feeling like there was no safety net.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what I was going to do.
That's a bad feeling.
Yeah. We'll go with that.
Third question, what is the thing in your life that you've lost that you regret losing the most?
Yeah, I think if you had asked me that question before we recorded Brother the Lights Don't Work, I think I would say just that youthful inspiration, and just like that feeling of making something with your friends, and how exciting that can be. But I feel like I've been able to regain that. I feel really, really, really privileged to be able to create with people that I care about and trust and respect.
I've talked to a lot of people now. I guess this is my 36th episode, and I think sometimes it's just really important to start new creative partnerships, just to kind of rediscover the process of getting to know someone else's creativity, and to sometimes figure out what you're taking for granted in your old creative partnerships. Like, it's, people are always like, oh man, the drummer started a side project, this band's almost over now. But I don't agree with that. I think it's important to get out there and do other stuff, just so you can remember what it is that you love about your original band, and also because it scratches different itches,
Right. Yeah. I was telling you about Jared, who was in Space and Noise Productions, and we just recently. We've remained friends throughout the years, and whenever we, we're hanging out with a group of people, it seems like the two of us always end up in some side room with a couple guitars, or he's gotten really into these baritone ukuleles. But yeah, just like, hey, check this thing out, or just like, let's figure out how to play a Beatles song or whatever. But we've been, Jared and I have been writing and doing some recording together too, and yeah, just really excited about that stuff. And I feel like that's kind of that. I bring that excitement with me to what I'm doing with the Rutabega. And my buddy Michael Doty, who he played a set at the camp out that we were just at. I do some recording with him and another friend of ours, Jerry, as a band called Secret Souvenir. And it's just like it scratches a different itch for sure.
Tell me about a time you received an act of kindness from a stranger.
Yeah, it happens all the time. It's I think it's maybe a Woody Guthrie, not a quote, but like something he had shared about how when he was in need and going from town to town and didn't have anything, he would always go to the poor part of town because those were the people that would help him. And I don't know, that always stuck with me.
Class solidarity is underrated.
Yeah. The thing that comes to mind with that is actually something with Emily. She's an incredible gardener, and that's like her happy space is when she's gardening. And she was we have like an environmental center. She was picking up some mulch there a couple weeks ago, or maybe it might have been last week, but yeah, she was getting ready to leave, and we have a Prius that we share, and she had that loaded up and totally got stuck. And she was telling me that just immediately, like, there were 4 people that were just like, hey, we'll help push you out. And it was muddy, and it was like, very clear that they were going to get muddy in this process, but
yeah.
They just didn't hesitate at all. Just like, jumped in like, all right, gun it. And, and got her out. And that's just what popped into my mind.
Yeah. What's your favorite place to gig? Well, there's so many, and I'm really excited. We're playing. He moved to Kalamazoo, maybe like a year and a half ago, something like that.
and he's been running sound at Bell's brewery, and we're actually playing there this coming Saturday, the 2nd, and I'm really excited about that because he's been raving about how good the room sounds. But I'm stalling here. I think I really love playing in Chicago because I used to be so intimidated and scared. Like if Space and Noise would get a Chicago show, when we were playing in like the early 2000s, it would be, maybe like a Tuesday night in the back, at the Big Horse, like behind the taqueria or something like that, like, and it always felt like like people were not interested or just like, oh, not impressed. And I'm sure a lot of that was just my own me projecting. Not that, they probably really didn't care what we were doing, but it's really awesome to play in Chicago now, and just feel like home, and like this looking up and just seeing like, oh, these are my friends, these are my family. But if I had to pick, like, it's hard to pick one specific thing. I'll just say, when the one of the barbecues that was at Borelli's, which was like this pizza place. I don't know. They're not even still doing shows there, but we played one of the barbecues there. I want to say it was 2014, in like the back room, and there was just something about that show, or that specific set that we played, that I just really felt like connected with people. So that, I'm not really answering your question, but that's what comes to mind for me. Playing there with the friends.
Visa and income considerations aside, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live?
Wherever Emily is. I don't, beyond that, I don't really care. I've lived all my life in Northern Indiana, so I'm sure there's some, wherever she is, I'm cool.
Yeah. Do you have an ideal musical instrument, and if so, do you already own it or not?
Oh, I do. I was telling you earlier about when we went out west, when we flew into Seattle and played those shows with Chung Antique, and I had never flown with a guitar before. I was really worried about that. I had seen I think maybe it was James Burns that had recently had the headstock broken off of one of his guitars when he was flying with it. Does that ring a bell? I feel like that was around then.
I'm not sure. James is PRF guy, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about. Is he in Police Teeth? Is that right?
Great band he was in Police Teeth. He's in a great band now called Menards.
Yeah. Seems like a really good guy.
Yeah. But I think I had seen that recently, that he had flown with a guitar and the headstock got broke. And anyway, I was really worried about flying with my guitar. And I I play a semi-hollow body electric, and up till then, my main guitar it's a DeArmond, which is, I mean, it's not like a fancy guitar by any means, but I had asked Charlie Zalian from Chung Antique. I was just kind of talking to him before we flew out there, and I was like, "Hey, I'm worried about flying with my guitar. You don't happen to have to know anyone or have something similar to this that I might be able to use while we're out there?" And he's just like such a sweetheart, and he's like, "Man, my backup guitar is a semi-hollow body, and I think it's probably pretty similar to yours, and just, yeah, consider it yours for the tour." He like sent me the info and of what it was. It's like a Dipinto, Dipinto, which is like a smaller company in Philly that makes them. And so we got out there, and we kind of got situated and went to their practice space so I could try out the guitar, and he was letting me use a couple pedals too. So I just immediately was like, yeah, that sounds great. That'll be perfect. And so we got back from that tour, and like a week later, I got home from work, and there was this big box on the porch, and I'm like, "What is this?" And so I took it inside, and I think Emily was out back gardening, and I opened it up, and he had mailed me. He had sent that guitar to me, and there was this.
That's incredible.
This beautiful card inside, and it was just like, hey, after the first show, I knew that that this was your guitar, and I wanted to send it with you when you guys left, but I didn't want it to give you a chance to tell me no. Which is just so, I mean, it's just such a Charlie thing. But I love that guitar so much. And him and his dad had gone out together and like found it at a pawn shop. I mean, there was this whole like story behind it, but he insisted that it had just been collecting dust because he hadn't really been using it that much, and he had forgotten what a cool guitar it was. But yeah, that's become my main guitar, and I love it. It's a semi-hollow body. It's black. It's got a gay name sticker on the back that says this machine kills stupid fucking assholes. That's my, I mean, it's my ideal. I like to, I don't know if I ever really want to own a super, super fancy guitar, just because I like to kind of be a little rough with my guitars, and I love that guitar. I love Charlie.
That's a fantastic story. I love that story.
Yeah.
Have you lost an instrument, either having to sell it to make ends meet, or through theft, or through a pawn shop, that you just desperately wish you could have back?
Well, I gave away that that crappy Oscar Schmidt that I told you. But I'm okay with that. Yeah, no, I don't think so. I had this really cool. It was a Kalamazoo, which, if I could be wrong, but I think Gibson ended up buying out Kalamazoo, or Kalamazoo became Gibson, or I don't know. Does that sound right?
I don't know the details. I think that Kalamazoo, there was a guitar factory there, and somehow it got folded into Gibson. And I know that you can still buy Kalamazoo guitars, and they're all Gibson body shapes and styles. But I don't know what the evolution of that relationship was.
Yeah. Well, I had this it was a really cool SG shape Kalamazoo, and I had no idea what happened to the guitar. It was probably early 2000s when I got it, and I'm thinking I must have sold it or something. But yeah, I mean, it's okay. It's really okay. I'm really happy with what I got. Garth I played through a Music Man 2x12 amp, and Garth had one of those. And when we first started playing together, he was like, "Hey, you should check out this amp," because I just only had like a little practice amp at that point. I hadn't really been playing with a drummer. So at some point I had sold the only loud amp that I had. And I fell in love with that amp, and so I ended up finding one on Craigslist. Got a really good deal on it. A couple of years. Yeah, I was like, I'm playing through Garth's amp all the time. I should probably get my own damn amp. But yeah, the Pinto guitar through that Music Man amp is, I really love how it sounds. Feels really good to play.
Yeah. So I was toying with this UFO question for a long time, but it didn't really. It wasn't great. I don't think it was a great question. So I'm thinking about this new question. I asked Erica this last week, but you haven't heard it yet because you haven't heard the end of the interview. But if you could join a band for one song at a show and play it, what would be your sort of ultimate song by another band to jump in on?
Whew. Oh man. Yeah, I've been thinking about Neil Young and that a lot. That was my first thought, but honestly, if I could sit in with McCartney on Helter Skelter, I think that would be the ultimate.
That would be pretty outstanding. I think he's still doing that. He's doing a whole bunch of Beatles songs on his current tour.
Yeah, but I want Ringo to be able to play on it too. So that's part of the deal. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
I love Abe. Was it Abe Froman? The drummer that plays
Boreal.
Yeah, that guy's incredible. But I want to be able to look back and see Ringo just going to town on Helter Skelter.
I think it's La Boreal. I'm looking it up now. I think it's Abe La Boreal. He's really great drummer. But Ringo,
he is.
I mean, he's my favorite. So him and Charlie Watts. Last question. If you can imagine a taxi that could go anywhere in time or space, it's not sort of restricted by physics as we know it or time, and you said to the driver, "Hey man, take me home." Where is home?
Yeah, I picture myself walking up a path and seeing a garden and just seeing Emily there out working in the garden, and I don't know where it is, but that's home.
Yeah. So I felt like that might have been the answer after if you could live anywhere, and you said anywhere Emily is. So that sounds like.
Yeah. Maybe that's a cop out, but
I don't know, man. I don't think so. My answer to that question is wherever my wife and daughter are.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
That's my home. I mean, this has been really great. I really appreciate you doing it on such short notice and taking time out of a weeknight to sit down and talk to me for a couple of hours.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I think what you're doing with Crash and Ride is really important, and I think it's really powerful, and I hope you keep doing it, and I love you.
Love you too, man. I'm gonna keep doing this as long as I can sustain it. Like
Right.
It's for one guy it tends to be a lot of work, but then I'll get an email from a friend, a listener or past guest who's like, man, this week's show is giving me hope and saving my life, and I think, how could I stop doing that?
Yeah, we all could use some hope.
Yeah.
And it helps to know that that we're not alone.
Yeah, that's really what it's about, is creating a community. So, well, thanks, man.
Thank you.
All right, what a sweet and thoughtful guy Josh is. I'm really glad he was able to do that interview. If you want to check out the Rutabega's music, their Bandcamp is thesenaughtylines.bandcamp.com. That's TheseKnottyLines.bandcamp.com. Man, I can't recommend that first LP enough. Brother, the Lights Don't Work, especially the track Turn on the Summer. Just blast that in your car going down the freeway and try not to get stopped for speeding. It's so fantastic. Thanks, as always, for listening. Thanks to our erstwhile producer, Jake Kreger. He was our first guest on the podcast, and he's constantly sending me notes on how to make the show better. If the show's better now than it was since the first time you heard it, that's all due to Jake. Thanks again to Gene Wolfolk and the Powder Room. All the music you hear on the show is from the Powder Room's first LP, Curtains, which is available at their Bandcamp page. That's thepowderroom.bandcamp.com. I used to play in that band. Wasn't on that LP. Was on the next LP, which was called Lucky. You can also get that at that same Bandcamp page. That's thepowderroom.bandcamp.com. Thanks again to Heil Audio for these two PR40 microphones they gave me such a good deal on. These are great podcasting microphones. The Heil PR40 is a very affordable dynamic microphone. I've used them on snare drum in the past and bass cabinet and sometimes even bass drum. But, man, they're also really good podcasting microphones. So if you're looking to upgrade your microphones and you do a podcast, you should definitely check out the Heil PR40. Thanks to all our listeners who filled out the survey. Thanks to everybody who bought a T-shirt or bought some coffee. I really appreciate your support. It helps me get up in the morning and keep going. If you need to reach the show, you can always email us at crashandride@protonmail.com. If you have comments or suggestions, or if you're wondering why the hell you didn't get a survey, hit me up, crashandride@protonmail.com. Until we speak again, take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself. Ask for help if you need it. Go see live music. Support your favorite band. And remember, loud guitars save lives.